Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Jason Weil. This is the Jupyter Frontends meeting for Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. Looks like we have 10 people on the call, including myself. If you haven't already, please sign in on our HackMD agenda and add any topics that you would like to talk about. Looks like we've got several people on the agenda today, so I want to make sure everyone gets time. Eric G., you are up first.
Hey, so yeah, we've got we have a first kind of a near final version of a what is Jupyter doc. So this document is supposed to explain kind of the foundations of everything that we do in the Jupyter ecosystem. So these are kind of concepts that are essential to our work, but they may not be fully understood by users, or there may be some confusion or lack of clarity. So these are questions like, what is interactive programming? What does that mean? How does it work? What is an REPL? What is a kernel? Why does lab run in a browser? Why is it split up into multiple pieces? What products does Jupyter offer? How are they different? Why should I use notebooks? What are the benefits? What's the point? So, we want to the idea is kind of to better inform and educate the Jupyter community about the Jupyter ecosystem, because as we've talked about a lot in different meetings, a common piece of feedback we hear from people in the Jupyter community and people who use Jupyter products is they don't have a clear picture of all the different pieces and parts and how everything fits together. So this document should help address that. And additionally, it has those kinds of basic explanations, but it also has kind of a short guided tour of the Jupyter ecosystem. So there are just some short sections at the bottom of the document that give a short overview of some of the most popular projects that we work on. So the point also is not just to educate, but to kind of show people, oh, these are the awesome things you can do with Jupyter. And here are some examples. So the purpose is also to kind of hopefully generate excitement for people who are taking their first steps in the Jupyter ecosystem. So I have a link to the document in the agenda. The PR link is there, and then a rendered docs HTML link is also shared. But I would say it is near final right now. We do need to add additional imagery to break up the text. And then I think really what I could also use help with, and hopefully you guys can help me with that, is finding cool examples to put on, because if anybody of you know, for each of the different sub-projects, if any of you have cool examples that we can put on this page to help generate excitement about Jupyter, that would be also like really cool. I would like to include as much of that stuff as we can. And we don't need to put the whole universe about everything, but at least having some cool examples for each one hopefully will be possible. So yeah, you can take a look at that document. And share cool examples or your thoughts and feedback.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this. I'm going to take a look at that and also provide feedback as well. Okay,
Cool,
Frederick,
thanks.
let me check real quick. Frederick, I don't see on the attendee list here. So I'll just read out what he wrote for the sake of the recording. So Google Summer of Code kickoff meeting happened yesterday. Writes Frederick, we are ready to enter the coding period starting on Monday the 27th. Everyone, please note Monday the 27th is a holiday in the US, though not in all countries. Lumino pull requests that need reviews. There's extracting the plugins handling outside the application. That's pull request 703. And replace Karma, which is unmaintained by Web Test Runner, which is Lumino pull request 304. So I'll drop links to those in the chat. If anyone could take a look at that. I know I spent some time yesterday afternoon looking through pull requests. They often don't get enough love or attention across many projects, so please take a look at those. So I don't see Frederick on the call, but does anybody else have any questions, comments about that?
I can provide some context on the first one. The PR that extracts the plugin system. The main motivation is to then use this in JupyterLab to have a more modular service manager. I don't know if you recall, but a few weeks ago we had a discussion about this. And this PR in Lumino should help at least set the correct API for like having a decoupled plugin management from an application. Yeah. So yeah, just to give some more context on why we have this. Might not be clear at first by just looking at the PR.
All right, cool. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. Any other questions, comments about these? All right. Let's move on in the agenda. Mike has a couple of items to discuss. Go ahead.
Righty, so JupyterLab 4.2 was released on May the 3rd, and it's been a few weeks now. I think it's high time to establish a timeline for JupyterLab 4.3 release. We do not have to commit to anything, and actually no one would check whether we met all the timelines because they are provisional, but it would be good to have some kind of a guideline and some kind of expectations. Between JupyterLab 4.0 and 4.1, there were about 6 months. Between 4.1 and 4.2, there were about 3 months. I do not have a strong opinion, but we talked about that yesterday on the Google Summer of Code kickoff, that it might be nice to allow the students, the participants, to have their work released in around the timeline of the SOC project. So the 3 months timeline would be useful here because it would roughly align with the end of the coding period. But then on the other hand, I recognize that it would put most of the development time in a run-up to summer holidays in the Northern Hemisphere. So yeah, I put some false timeline working back from 3 months from now, which would be, let's say, 1st of August as a final release for 4.3. And then RC would need to be at around 18th of July, and feature freeze would be on 27th of June, which is 1 month from now. So we would have about a month and a week to propose new features. So this is a soft feature freeze. So any pull request that was ready for review would be considered. Any thoughts, counter proposals?
Yeah, I also pointed out the thing that Mozilla maintains for, I can't find it again, for their release trains, and it just puts that, very clearly up. Here we go. All right, so here you go. You got something like this, and then if you're interested in, that tells you here's what we support, and then you go into one of those and it tells you here's what you're going to get if you actually do that thing. There's some nice stuff on the Spotify engineering blog about release trains, but it would reduce some of these discussions if it's basically, all right, we released it, let's put out the PR for adding the thing that was not yet on the plan, and then it just shows up on the docs. So yes, have this discussion, but also put this someplace public.
We've
Without-
also, to that point, I really appreciate you sharing that, Nick, because we've also in the past talked about having like a long-term support version of JupyterLab. I'll drop a link to the Team Compass issue. Because we've sometimes had that question come up of like, can we have something that even if it's an older version and it won't get 100% of the new features, we as a big company or a government agency or something can rely on it for longer. But I also don't know what the result, while this is still open, I opened it back in February 14th, which is about 3 months ago now. Don't know how everyone else feels about that, but I like the idea of having like frequent releases if you really want to live on the bleeding edge. And if you just want something stable and you're willing to accept a slower feature cadence, you can get the LTS release, because that's how Firefox has been doing it for a while. And I personally appreciate it, and I can tell my company does as well, because we tend to be on LTS.
So what we did in the past is just include this provisional release timelines in a public issue. So this information is there, it's just not on the docs, which we can start doing, and I think it would be beneficial because it's way easier to find. It would be way easier to find the past release dates and see how it was working out. If it was in a single place rather than in 100 of different issues.
Yeah, I mean, more broadly for the docs folks, I don't know if anybody's still around. I mean, this is a thing that just we need that's not discourse posts and whatever at a higher level, Jupyter level. So it's not even a thing that would go on a Team Compass. It would literally be on the Jupyter.org repo, and no fancy tricks, just some dumb markdown, maybe a little bit of Mermaid, something that's going to render just fine and lets you know where things are. Because I mean, they put out however many major versions of Jupyter Hub in the last like 2 years. That's a lot harder to move towards. It's a lot. I have never seen 2 Jupyter Hub deploys that work the same way. And so, knowing, or like today on Binder, they're like, we're going to start doing Lab 4 on Binder. Great. All right. I guess you go read the discourse for that or something like that. But repo to Docker is, a big, well, when Binder works. So having all those be coordinated in a single place is probably more valuable than just a single team starting to declare it. And
do we have an issue for this anywhere? Because if not, I can draft one on the docs working group to capture some of this information.
yeah, sure. I mean, the way that I see organizing it is around the Jupyter meta package.
Yeah.
And so, you go to Jupyter, read the docs, whatever, right? And it's right there. And if you pull the name of some, version, whatever, we can encode stuff however we need to do it. That would still not anger the Semver gods. So your package manager can do this for you, right? Like that's what you want. You don't want to have to go and track down all these numbers individually. But no, there is no issue to my mind. And you'd get the docs because they would be versioned and they would be packaged. And they would be viewable inside JupyterLab.
I will share a link to the issue.
All
Hey.
right. I noticed that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just wanted to check back on the core points, whether anyone has concerns or counter suggestions on this provisional timeline.
Yeah, I mean, if you make a timeline and then they don't meet it, what do? Right? I mean, Google Summer of Code is low risk. That's one of the tenets of it. So it's not, you know, are you willing to hold up the release if the students do not perform? Not to be grumpy or anything, but just like that's the thing. So if you put this line in the sand and then it doesn't happen, then what?
I think the value in having a target is that then we can actually decide when the merge window is and whether we are merging things, rather than have that disorganized. And I think there is no problem in things moving by a day, a week, or a few weeks, but the order of magnitude, is there an interest? Is there enough features that would constitute, that would make this minor release valuable to users? So things might slightly break, some things might look slightly different. Is there enough value? Is there enough people working on things to plan for a 3 months timeline rather than a 6 months timeline?
I mean, if people have to recode their extensions, 3 months is really fast. So, you know, JupyterLab did its release. Notebook just got its release like last week, merged off of that. Jupyter, like, we're still trying, you know. And so if it takes us 2 months or whatever to get more or less first party stuff, even if it's not official or whatever, right, to even update to the architecture, the 3 months is insanity. So
has there been a breaking changes in 4.3 for you on Jupyter Lite or Notebook?
In 4.3, I have no idea. Haven't even looked. We
4.2,
like,
sorry.
I mean, we're just now to where we could do a pre-release because we had to wait for Notebook because we shipped Notebook.
Yeah, the update to 4.2 downstream in Lite went quite well compared to the 4.1. I think there were less things to adjust from, and but yeah, there is still this lag for Jupyter Lite in the end, because kind of wait for the final packages to be available to cut releases, and they will always go through a pre-release first, because we never know for sure if all extensions will be compatible. So it's maybe better to do it like a bit progressively like this. But I think it's fine for Lite in that case.
Yeah, I mean, Lite's a weird, special, you know, janky case, right? But then, you know, then there's stuff that's downstream of Lite. There's VoiceC, which is also, you know, argument, you know, or could be considered a first party because whatever. So, yeah, the 3 month cadence is just very brutal for a mostly volunteer organization. I'm not sure if it's productive.
Okay. Hearing any other comments about that? I noticed that Frederick is now on the call. You weren't on before. We read through the items that you were discussing, that you had written in the agenda. I'm not sure if you had anything else to add now that you're here on the call.
Thanks, Jason. Actually, not really, except if people have questions. Just for the maintenance PR on Lumino, the one removing karma, basically it doesn't change anything except the test runner. So we're still using in that PR, Mocha and Che, and we're still using Rollup to build the tests to load them in the browser, and the browser are loaded through Playwright, as I think we were doing for most of them, also for Karma. So yeah, the only thing that has changed is that we are green also for all tests, because since a couple of months we were mostly always having some issue with the tests on macOS with WebKit with some timeout that were making them red, but with the new test runner, everything is green. Yeah.
Maybe just a question on the new Node.js test runner and the reason we can't use it yet. I don't remember exactly. I guess we still need something that is compatible with JS DOM or some more browser-specific packages. But the Node.js now ships with the default test runner. And I was wondering if there is a way to progressively switch to that one at some point, because that will reduce the amount of dev dependencies we need to use.
Yeah, I did not try to move to that one as Lumino was tested within the browser, so I guess it's good to keep that. Yeah, that's the trade-off, as Nick is writing on the chat. Like sometimes you don't have things like Canvas. I guess for Lumino, oh no, we have the data grid. Data grid is using Canvas. So yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I guess having two test runners would be there will be no benefit, because then it would complexify things a bit more. Like, I mean, using the default Node.js test runner when possible, and then this web test runner. Yeah. I'm just wondering, that's why I was asking the question. Yeah.
No problem. Darian, that's actually a good question, but I think it has. So Darian has asked in the chat if data grid has test, and I think no, it has.
Yes, there are tests. I started adding them, and I was very pushy about requiring any new pull request to include tests for data grid. So there are tests. The data grid tests do not use Canvas extensively. So they usually test easy things, but they do touch on Canvas dependency. So I don't know if swapping to the same thing that we did in JupyterLab recently would work, but it might be worth a try.
Okay. Well, returning to the agenda here, I'll drop one more link in because I saw that folks had joined later on. So I already talked about the Team Compass issue about long-term support version of JupyterLab. But this came up yesterday during triage. We do triage every week of new issues. And sometimes some of the terms that we use in Jupyter, Jupyter effectively has a language of its own to describe things in the application. For example, the word console is different in Jupyter versus on other, for other people who are used to using similar systems. So I'm wondering, has there ever been an effort to create, there is something of a style guide in the documentation, although it's, with all due respect, kind of buried in the contributor docs, or a glossary to just say, like, this is what we call that in Jupyter world, so that when people are writing documentation, sorry, go ahead, Eric.
No, there is a glossary on the metadocs. I don't think it is widely used. I've added some things to it and have made some edits to that document, but it's along with a lot of the other docs on the meta site. It needs to be improved and updated and interlinked. I think I think that I've done some interlinking to that page from the sub-projects, but that fits the overall goal and strategy of the docs working group, which is to highly interlink the project. So I think it would be good for us to improve and update that glossary page and then make sure it is interlinked wherever it's appropriate for exactly these kinds of things that are people may not understand when they see a term like that or need it to be disambiguated in the context of Jupyter.
I mean, even having something that was like showing in much the same way as like a car owner's manual will have a line art drawing of, some, some console with call outs being like, this is what this is called, this is what that is called. And then you can explain like, press this button to do this function. So where should I open a new issue to call out, like need to improve style guide, need to improve glossary? Is there like a docs repo or Team Compass?
I would do the docs team compass. Yeah.
Docs Team Compass. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that.
And I think having a standalone style guide, like we have a style guide for kind of visual elements to explain, for example, how to color things using our variables, which for new contributors might be unfamiliar. But in terms of writing things, it can be difficult. We've gotten a few issues that came in triage because people filed a bug thinking that a certain feature didn't exist or didn't work a certain way, and it did, but the messaging used terms that they were unfamiliar with. I mean, given our global reach, it's going to be impossible to get 100%, but using consistent language will certainly improve matters.
Yeah, I think that feeds into a larger discussion about there being a full official style guide for docs. One of the things that we are trying to be cognizant about is not trying to be too prescriptive to individual sub-projects. And then there's the challenge of trying to find what we already have and update it and use it, and what are new rules if we want to have, or what are new suggestions for a new style guide if we want to adopt those.
Sometimes we get messages where people are just kind of presuming that Jupyter works like some other project, which I'll call X, and then they'll just use the terms in project X to describe Jupyter, which can be problematic for a variety of reasons because Jupyter has its own design philosophy.
I think this is a good first step. That is, it's a good first easy step that will, that can lead into that larger discussion for sure. Because this is a pretty simple thing we're talking about, just clarifying terms.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, team. Take another look at the agenda here. Nicola has a comment here about the collaborative chat extension and a proposal for a quick presentation. And I think we have time for that.
Hi, hello. Okay, I can try to make a quick presentation on it. Just for the context, so the extension has been released for the first time last week. The idea is to have a chat based on a shared document from Jupyter collaboration, and so chat is only a regular file on in the file system that is open with a specific widget for the chat. I will try to share my screen. Just a minute. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So the idea is to, like I said, have a chat like a regular document that should appear in the file system. Most of the part of that chat of the UI, the UI part of the chat has been taken from Jupyter AI chat. So we can open a file and have a chat widget. Then, so of course the chat is collaborative and working. So the user are the one from the awareness. And so we have the ability to edit the message, only the one we wrote. So I can edit this one, I cannot edit this one. And so that was a chat document. And there is also a sidebar to manage the chat. So we can switch to a sidebar to still work on a notebook on the main area and have the chat on the side. So we can, it's still updated, and we can manage several chats on the sidebar. So I can create a new one here. And I will have the two chats in the sidebar. I can switch from the main area to the sidebar. And so that's it for the presentation. Thank you.
This is really cool. Thank you so much for doing that. And I'll drop in a Jupyter AI issue that I opened after seeing a demo with that to kind of allow Jupyter AI to use this chat interface, because that was this I think came out of a desire to decouple chat from AI and make it a more basic feature of JupyterLab, which I think would be really cool.
That was the idea.
Yeah.
Good.
So now you can have two chat interfaces, which is not necessarily a good thing. So it'd be cool if we could unify those. Okay.
Agree. Good.
I'll paste in the HackMD agenda one more time. If anybody has additional topics you want to discuss on the record, please add those in. Next up on the agenda is Rocio with an update about Lab 4.2 and Notebook 7.2 blog posts.
I just wanted to share some a quick update that a blog post was submitted last week, and I received some feedback from Andre and Anna Ruwakawa, and I have made some changes there, so I have let them know. So it's pending a second review, but hopefully that can be out soon. Oh, that was it for me.
Cool. Yeah. And if you could plug that blog post on other social media, like on our Twitter or Mastodon accounts, that would be good. We're getting engagement on all of those as well.
Yeah, I'll ask about that. See if that can have if some reposts could be made for the blog.
Okay, cool.
And Razio, if you will look in the email exchange that we had about the blog, I even referenced the page. So look at our email exchange about your request about the blog post, and yeah, I mentioned ability to do the social media posts, either like original or reposting your post or someone else's post. So check it. I also referenced the page on the website that mentions the character restrictions for Medium and Hexiderm. So yeah, just check it out.
I do remember that. So I'll make some short paragraphs or a few sentences just for those and request some other amplification.
Yep, sounds good. And thank you for making the edits. I will review them today.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, so I'm taking a look at the agenda. That is the end of our scheduled agenda. Does anybody have any other topics they want to discuss on the record? All right. Well, thank you everyone for presenting. I will stop the recording so we can have off the record discussion. Everyone brace yourselves. 3,